Hi, everyone, and thanks for checking out this movie review. So, today we'll be continuing to take a look at the current horror franchise that I'm reviewing, and that's the Friday the 13th franchise. So, today we are up to, and we'll be taking a look at Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, which is right here in my 8 pack. I don't know if you can see that. Part 6, Jason Lives. So, yeah, I'll just kind of go through the setup and the premise as normal, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will contain spoilers once again. So, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. It's a 1986 American slasher film written and directed by Tom McLaughlin and starring Tom Matthews, Jennifer Cook, David Kagan, and C.J. Graham. It's the sixth installment in the Friday the 13th franchise and the last one to feature the Tommy Jarvis as the protagonist. Continuing on from the events of The New Beginning, the plot follows Tommy after he accidentally resurrects mass murderer Jason Voorhees while attempting to destroy his body to ensure that he will not return. While Jason returns to Crystal Lake for another killing spree, Tommy must overcome his fear of the mass killer that has haunted him for years and find a way to stop him once and for all. So sometime after the events of the Pinehurst halfway house, Tommy Jarvis is released from the mental institution, despite still having hallucinations of the mass murderer, Jason Voorhees, whom he killed years ago. He returns to Crystal Lake, now renamed Forest Green, to confront his fears alongside his friend Alan Hawes. The pair visit Jason's grave during a thunderstorm, hoping to cremate the killer's body and finally end Tommy's nightmares. After digging up Jason's corpse, Tommy experiences flashbacks of his last encounter with Jason and furiously impales his body with a metal fence post. Just as two lightning bolts strike the post, causing Jason to come back to life as an immortal revenant. Jason proceeds to kill Hawes and don his old hockey mask, which Tommy brought with him. Tommy flees to the sheriff's office to warn the police of Jason's return, only to be arrested and jailed. His warning of Jason's return goes unheeded by Sheriff Mike Garris, who is aware of Tommy's institutionalization and thinks he is hallucinating Jason's return. On the road, camp counselors Darren Robinson and Lisbeth Mott get lost looking for the Camp Forest Green and are stopped by Jason, who murders them both. The following morning, Garris's daughter Megan and her friends Sissy Baker, Court Andrews, and Paula Mott arrive to report Darren and Elizabeth missing. Tommy warns them about Jason, but as he is now considered an urban legend, they ignore the warnings, though Megan grows attracted to him. In the woods, Jason happens upon a corporate paintball game. He kills the five members, three via decapitation, a fourth among dismemberment, and crushed a fifth's face into a tree. He steals a machete from him in the process, discovering he now possesses superhuman strength as a result of his resurrection. So that's a mouthful. That's a lot to sort of go into, but that's basically the setup of this film and the premise of how Jason returns. The cast is again, Tom Matthews plays Tommy Jarvis in this movie. David Kagan is Sheriff Mike Garris. Jennifer Cook is his daughter, Megan Garris. Carrie Noonan is Paula Mott. Renee Jones is Elizabeth Sissy Baker. Tom Fridley is Carter Court Andrews. Darcy DeMoss is Nicola Nikki Parsley. Nancy McLaughlin is Lisbeth Mott. Tony Goldwyn is Darren Robinson. And Alan Blumfield is Larry. So yeah, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives from 1986. Once again, I think, it's the first film that's both written and directed by one person, Tom McLaughlin. Um, so yeah, this is definitely a fan favorite of the series. Jason Lives, part of my 8 pack here, Blu-ray 8 pack, the first 8 Friday the 13th movies. I enjoyed it. It's definitely different. It's got a different feel and vibe than the five previous movies, in my opinion. This is the movie where they kind of went in a different direction with the series in terms of the tone. They kind of knew what Friday the 13th was at this point, what it's become, and they sort of started to parody that a little bit. So I'll just kind of go through my thoughts. I'll start with the pros and then go into the cons. So pros wise, this is a pretty violent Jason. The kills are they're pretty creative and violent. We haven't seen kills like this before where he literally bends people in half and triple beheading. Those are the two big ones that stand out to me. Um, And there's a little bit more gore and blood than the previous film. It seems like the MPAA didn't hack this one up quite as much, although it's still there's still cutaway kills that we get, but you know the MPAA had their hand in that. I also really enjoyed the third leg, so to speak, of the Tommy Jarvis storyline, and I thought they did a pretty good job. It felt complete and satisfying by the end of this movie. That we had Tommy Jarvis from parts 4 through 6, played by different actors, of course, in all the movies, and I actually liked all the portrayals. They were all different, but for the movies that they were in, I think they worked pretty well. And I think Tom Matthews does a pretty good job with this version of Tommy Jarvis. So I like sort of the conclusion of that whole story. I think C.J. Graham, who plays Jason in this movie, does a good job. That's definitely a pro. He's very menacing in this movie. I'm not sure I'd put him as high as Richard Brooker, Ted White from parts 3 and 4, but he's right there. If he's not with him, he's right behind him in terms of his portrayal of Jason. I really thought he did a good job. I like the final girl, sort of the final girl of Megan, played by Jennifer Cook. Unlike some of the previous final girls, she has a little bit of wit to her, a little bit of sass, and she kind of is a smart ass a little bit, but she's also sexy at the same time. So I wasn't afraid of Jason at the end. So I thought, I also wasn't afraid of Tommy as well. Kind of believed in his story, um, what he was saying. So I liked her as a final girl. I think I'd probably put her right there after Amy Steele's Ginny and maybe Trish from part 4. I'd say she's probably right there. I give him credit again for trying something different with a completely different tone, much like Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 or Bride of Chucky from that series, kind of going in a different direction. It wasn't so much comedic direction with Nightmare on Elm Street, just a different direction with the character of Freddy. But I give him credit for trying something different. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I'll get into that. Um, this kind of movie kind of feels like, because with part 5 their original plan was to go with Tommy Jarvis becoming the killer. You saw at the end of part 5 sort of that confusing ending to part 5, but clearly they were going in that direction of making him the killer with everything that's happened. I guess is his brain kind of turned to mush and he becomes a killer himself. But because the part 5 wasn't well received by the fans, the fans cried, they were crying for Jason, not crying, but they were clamoring for Jason, I should say. So this movie is the ultimate, like, okay, you want Jason, we'll give you Jason. Boom, here he is. And that's really what this movie is when I watched it. It's kind of like the gloves were off. Here's Jason, with no apologies. This is who Jason is at this point, and there was definitely an air of wit and comedic aspect of it. Like the first 5 films were sort of campy and cheesy. They had their little bits of humor in them, but it wasn't as much tongue in cheek as this movie is. This movie was full on, uh, kind of like rock and roll comedy, Jason Voorhees, in your face sort of a movie. That's sort of how I took it anyway. There's some decent jokes and comedy in the movie that's combines pretty well with Jason's brutal violence and killings. Not all of it landed for me, but some of it did. It's a well directed film. Tom McLaughlin knew what he wanted to, kind of knew the story he wanted to tell, the direction he wanted to go, and he delivered on that. There's really no wasted time or filler time in this movie, like there has been in some previous movies. This comes at you hard and fast. It's got a short runtime. I think it's only 86 minutes, according to my Blu-ray DVD or my Blu-ray movie. Um, and I enjoyed the third act of this movie. I thought it had a good final confrontation with chaining up Jason and having that big rock and basically putting him back in his water grave where he originally came from, and the end of part 1. I thought that sort of was sort of interesting and sort of felt right. That Tommy was trying to drown him in essence and put him back at the bottom of the lake. So yeah, lots of pros with this movie. It's a fun watch. It's an entertaining movie, but I do have some cons with this movie. Starting with the opening scene where Tommy goes to make sure that Jason's really dead, even though he's buried under the ground. I'm not really sure what he was trying to accomplish there. And of course, once he has the casket open, You got the bolt of lightning from the storm that's going on. It's just kind of like, really? Okay. But that's, again, it's in step with this movie. I just thought it was kind of silly and ridiculous, but that's kind of what a lot of this movie is. Basically resurrected by a bolt of lightning. Um, Most of the characters, though, in this movie are pretty forgettable and pretty thinly written, I thought. The only exception, of course, would be Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis, that character we've come to know, and Jennifer Cook as Megan Garris. The rest of them, from her dad to the other counselors, they're pretty they're pretty forgettable. They don't really do much for me. Um, the whole scene with the paintball, the corporate paintball game going on during the day, just felt like it was forced in there. I really didn't find the comedy in that. It was really, it had sort of the comedic music in the background, just kind of silly, kind of like Halloween 5 to a certain extent with the two cops and the clown music. That whole scene didn't work for me, even though it was cool to see the triple beheading, decapitation that Jason had at the end of that. But that whole scene I could have done without. It was just overly silly and felt like it was out of place. Having young kids in this movie, it's the first time actually in a Friday the 13th movie. And for a lot of people, that might make some sense. It's like, well, you're at this camp for kids. How come we've never seen any kids? In this movie, you get quite a bit of kids, but the problem was they're kind of pointless. It feels like they're just kind of there to be there. Jason's clearly not going to kill them or anything like that. He encounters them at several moments in the second half of the movie, but they just kind of were pointless, and they really didn't contribute in any way, other than the fact there were a couple of boys that had some pretty good jokes. The one that landed the best for me, well, what were you going to be when you grew up? Basically when they knew that Jason had taken over the camp. That was kind of funny, but other than that, they really didn't have a place there. Another con, and this is going to go forward through the future movies, is this is where Zombie Jason is born and really started with the bolt of lightning. The Jason in the first four movies was a little bit more grounded in reality. I mean, as much as it can be in a horror movie anyway, obviously not total reality, but when you have zombie Jason, who's just a supernatural being that can't really get hurt and can only be killed or go away for short periods of time, but you can never really kill him. He's got superhuman strength. Nobody can really take him on. It kind of loses something to me anyway. It kind of loses that being grounded in reality that the first four movies had. And that's what we have from here on out is Zombie Jason. There's better versions of that. There's worse versions of it. This is a pretty good version for what it is, the first version of Zombie Jason, but it does sort of take something away from the essence of this franchise and the originality of it and sort of the groundedness of it. Um, Not that it's a huge deal, but it's the first Friday the 13th movie that doesn't have any nudity, which is part of the formula, so to speak. So I was kind of caught off guard by that. There really isn't a lot of. There's one scene in the trailer in the motorhome or the trailer truck where two people are having sex, but it's clothes on, basically dry humping, but no nudity at all in this movie, which is kind of weird. Like I said, that's not a huge con, but I had to bring it up because it's a Friday the 13th movie, and I believe it's the only one that we don't have any nudity in it, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I'll see as the movies go on, but I know of the first six, it's certainly the only one. Um, and I mentioned this in the Chucky series and the Freddy series in the previous few months. This is where it becomes a bit of a parody of itself. Jason becomes a bit of a parody of itself. The Friday the 13th movies become a bit of a parody of themselves. I'm not a huge fan of that. They don't go overboard, I don't feel like, in this movie, but it's certainly there. I mean, you don't have to, it's hard to miss some fourth wall breaking and things of that nature. Um, there's not a lot of story to this movie. Not that there ever really is to a Friday the 13th movie, and I do give them credit for not rehashing the same thing. But it's basically just resurrecting Jason from a bolt of lightning from the grave and him coming back to life, supernatural, and killing people at Crystal Lake. Even though they changed the name of it, it's Crystal Lake. We all know it. So just not a very deep or meaningful story. Jason returns, kills people. Okay, and I don't think this movie was as scary or suspenseful as some of the previous movies, particularly parts. I'd say two, three, and four. Five wasn't particularly scary, although it was a little bit more suspenseful than this one. Part of that's because Jason kills people and is seen during the day. You don't have that nighttime stormy atmosphere, although you get some of that at the beginning and at the end of the film in the third act. But it's more of they went for more of a fun, entertaining, humorous movie, a humorous version of Jason, I shouldn't say a humorous version of Jason because he's still very serious. Just a more fun, humorous tone to this movie. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my pros and cons for the movies, guys. Overall, I enjoy Jason Lives. I'm not quite as high on it as some other people that actually. I've heard a lot of people say it's their favorite of the series. I guess I can kind of understand why. If you just want to see if you want to see Jason just hack up a bunch of people in a very violent and gory way, this movie's probably for you. I just think it loses a little bit from the previous movies that I enjoy. I still like it though. Don't get me wrong. It's a good movie. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 in terms of my rating. So yeah, Jason Lives, part Friday the 13th, part six from 1986. They knew what they wanted. They delivered it. It just kind of takes away a little bit from me from what I liked about the first four movies and even the fifth movie to a certain extent. But 8 out of 10, still a really good movie, still a fun watch, entertaining, a great Jason, a good final girl, um, and Megan Garris, good final girl. So yeah, overall, I definitely recommend checking this one out. 8 out of 10. Go ahead and give me your comments and your thoughts down below about Jason Lives, what you would rate it as. Please like this video, click the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel to see my continuing Friday the 13th review and ranking videos, as well as other standalone horror movie videos. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day. Bye.